My wife and I went to this author fair, and it was at night, and families would come, and we all had our booths, all the authors, and we'd sell our books there. We'd talk about the books and our writing process. And I remember this little child. He was around 8 years old, and I remember he comes to our booth, and he takes out quarters. He's looking at the quarters, and then he puts them back in his pocket. And he takes the book. He starts looking at it. He's hugging it. He's reading it. And I said, "Take it, take it." So he walks with it. He comes back later, and his sister came. And his sister was about, I would say, 13. She goes over to me and she goes, "How much is the book?" And I said, "Oh, it's whatever it was, $10, $12, I forget." So she takes out his quarters, and she takes out more quarters, and she starts putting them on the table and starts counting. I immediately at that point, but I said, "Take that back." I signed both books for the kids. I gave it to them. The little boy was so excited. I didn't accept any money from him. And I looked at my wife, and she's tearing also, and we said, "We got to do something about this."
Today we are going to meet Michael Dotsikas, author of Benjamin Birdie's First Flight and Benjamin Birdie and the Tree Dwellers. Mike is a serial author of children's books. He uses his stories to responsibly educate and inspire children about the world and how it works. His work has been recognized by the Moonbeam Children's Book Awards and Mom's Choice Awards. He runs a foundation for helping homes in need to get the books that they need, and now he helps other authors who are interested in writing children's books. Having Mike on today was a very big deal for me because we haven't been able to have a guest on yet who can speak to writing children's books. Is it a different process? Is it easier? Is it harder? It's something that we just haven't had come up yet. But even if you're writing a book that is not for children, be it a novel or a memoir or something just not for this age demographic, Mike's interview is still cram-packed with good advice for anyone looking to publish their own book and get further along in their journey as a writer. I highly, highly encourage you to listen to this episode. And if you are new to the show, be sure that you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And with that, let's go to the interview. Michael, welcome to the podcast.
Isaac, good to see you, and thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to be here with you today.
Thank you for making the time to be on. I know that you are a busy man, and I know that you have done a good bit in this space of writing books, specifically children's books. So we are going to unpack a lot today in the time that we've been allotted. But before we start, tell us a little bit about your book that we're going to be talking about today, or books, I should say, and what they're about.
All right. So we're going to talk about my Benjamin Birdie children's book series. Actually, it's 2 books, and actually the first 2 books that I published and wrote. We'll get into my journey and so forth. But the actual book, the first book, Benjamin Birdie's First Flight, is actually about a little bird. It's a little bird that has a big dream. I mean, he lives at the top of a tall tree in a majestic forest with his mom, and he's looking at all the other birds in the sky. He's not yet ready to fly. He's looking at all the other birds and saying, "I want to be just like them. I think I could do this." So he tells his mom he's ready, and she says, "Hold your horses, little bird. You're not ready yet. So have some patience, and you will be." So she goes out to get some lunch, and what does Benjamin do? He decides to give flying a try against his mother's wishes. So it turns out he's flying for about a second, and then falls all the way down, tumbles down, and he lands on the forest floor, looks up, and says, "Oh boy, what am I going to do now? How am I going to get back up there and deal with my mama when she gets back?" So the book is about actually Benjamin meeting all these different animals that live on the tree and around the tree, and how these animals, using maybe their unique abilities, get Benjamin back to his nest. And a lot of these animals don't even know they're helping, but in the end, he does get back to his nest, and he admits to his mom that he wasn't ready to fly, and he made a lot of friends in during his journey. So that's what the first one is about. The second book, Benjamin Birdie and the Tree Dwellers, continues his flight. He wants to continue. He wants to fly again, but at the moment his mom tells him that you're ready to fly, that's when he gets anxious. He gets really nervous, and he's like, "Oh boy, am I ready?" So this book is about being inspired. He actually tries to fly at that point, almost doesn't make it, but he's inspired by all the new friends he made on the tree. They're cheering him on, and once he flies, he realizes, wow, this is great, and he becomes like the super flyer. And what happens? It sparks all the other animals on the tree to look at him and be inspired by him. And they tried different things that they never thought they could try. So the first book is about teamwork, kindness, being kind to others, and the second book is about inspiration. Be inspired. Take some risks and do things that you never thought you could do, because you'll surprise yourself. So those are the two books. My first two in my journey, but excited for them.
So take me back to where this idea was born. How does someone go from idea to concept? Did you just happen to see a bird fall out of a tree one day, or was there some big backstory to this?
The Benjamin Birdie idea, yes, it actually that's the way it happened. We actually, when I was a big reader with my kids when they were growing up. I mean, I loved reading to them several books a night, before bedtime, and that was part of our routine. Story time was very big in our house, and I remember, one day actually we were out in the backyard and we noticed my son at that time was 5 years old. He's our oldest. He saw a little egg on the ground, and I said, "Oh, thank you for showing me that." Took the egg, I placed it back in the nest, and he was so worried. What's going to happen to the little bird that's in the egg? And I said, "No, don't worry, everything's going to be okay. The little bird's going to hatch, and Mama's going to take care of it, and it's going to be okay." Come at story time at night, he first thing he asks after he picks his books out, he goes, "What's going to happen to that little bird?" Like, he was so worried about that little bird. And I said, "Oh, don't worry. Let me tell you a little story." So at that moment, I just made up this story about a little bird who fell out of his nest when he was trying to fly, and 4 animals that lived near or on the tree helped him get back to his nest. So it was just 4 animals, an elephant, a giraffe maybe, and some other animals. And he was so excited. He loved that story. Next day, bedtime, he goes, "All right, Dad." He picks out his books, ready to read his books, and he goes, "Actually, can you tell me that story about the little bird again?" So that went on for several weeks. I would come up with many different animals helping the little bird at that time get to his nest. And back then, I never inspired to be a children's author. I actually started an IT company, a tech IT services support company. I've been doing that for the past 30 years, but it was always something that I wanted to do. I thought I was a good storyteller, and I always used to tell my children a lot of stories. So, and ideas come that way. I mean, for me, they come through not only imagination, but just through everyday life. Any little thing that can happen on a daily basis can spark a story, and then you can take that story to unimaginable things. Yeah.
I like that you share that, because
that's how
inspiration can come from anywhere. At the same time, there's got to be a process from going, "Hey, I got this story about a bird," to "I'm going to make a full blown out book." And I see how, for a lot of our guests that come on, they have this whole process. They have to go through writing, they have to go through edit, peer review, all these steps. Whereas with your books, it seems like a much smaller concept, but at the same time, when I try and reverse engineer something like a children's book, I don't know where to start. So how does someone go from IT to, "I have a book that I'm going to start getting awards for"? By the way, I think we're going to have that mentioned in the intro.
I'll tell you, my writing journey didn't begin till I would say about 15, maybe close to 12 years ago, 12 to 15 years ago. I was commuting on the train. I commuted from where we live out on Long Island to Manhattan. I had an office there, supported my clients there. And during one of my commutes, it just came to me, that little bird idea that I came up with how many years ago came into my head. And I said, "Wow, you know what? Maybe it's time to start writing things down," because I've always wanted to write especially for children, write for children. So I started writing on my phone and started telling the story of this little bird. I love to rhyme. One of my favorite books, children's books, are rhyming books. It's just, I feel they're so much fun. They add an element of engagement for kids. And that was one of the things. So I started writing in rhyme. Didn't know that I could rhyme back then, but from experience, and people were telling me you can rhyme pretty good, pretty well. So I started writing this, and a few weeks into the process, I remember coming home one night and I printed out what I wrote. And my wife and I were about ready for bed, and we're in bed. We're watching a little TV, and I said, I have something for you. I want you to read this. I said, I wrote it. And she started, she goes, what is this? And I said, it's a children's book. And she goes, She goes, I know you mentioned about like to write or kids, but I never knew you had an idea. I said, read it. So she's reading it in bed. She's looking at me. She reads it. She's looking at me. And at the very end, she was enthralled in this. She goes, this is incredible. She goes, but I'll tell you, it needs a lot of help. So my wife all of a sudden became my editor, and it was incredible. For the next several months, we sat together at night, out on our porch, and that's why we actually created a publishing company called Porch Time Publishing, because we just would sit on our porch, we'd have our little snacks before dinner, and she would help me edit my story. She would give me ideas, and that's why actually she came up with the name Benjamin, because originally the story was about a little birdie, and she says, this bird needs a name. She goes, it needs a name. So, I'm big into alliteration with the letters, same letters starting two words together, and she came up with Benjamin. I loved it. It actually flowed in the rhythm and meter. So that's how Benjamin. But I'll tell you, I'm actually in the process of writing a middle chapter, for children in middle grades, and it's a whole different ballgame. Writing for picture books versus middle grade and also adult novels. Because picture books, the story is told not only by the words and what you say on the page, but by the illustrations. And there are times where you have to not say certain words because the illustrations will give the proper, setting or meaning or plot to the reader. And it's very important to get a balance for that in picture books.
So let's go back a little bit to your wife said that it needed a lot of help. Take us through what some of the things are that you've learned as far as your toolbox, or what needs to be a must if you're going to write a successful children's book.
Yeah, so that took time. For me, I always research. I research a lot. I researched in how I wanted to publish the book. Do I go the self-publishing route, or do I go the traditional publishing route? And but look, for everyone has their own way of dealing with the publishing world. I made the decision to self-publish because of the fact that I felt I would get to the market quicker. I didn't want to go through the process of submitting my manuscript for review by editors at a publishing company that would take 3 to 6 months. And then if I get rejected, I'd have to go to other, and it would take a much, much longer process. So, from start to finish, we actually wrote the book and published it with copies in less than 18 months. And then high quality publishing, you can get away with publishing, when you're self-published, you don't do that high quality work. But I was very careful in really making the book stand out. No one even thought that it was a self-published book because of the quality of the book and so forth. But yeah, so what I do, because I researched so much, is I looked at other children's writers and I looked at other children's books and I looked at what I loved with children's books. And for me, the biggest thing is engagement with the kid, with the children. So when you're reading it, you're not only reading the book to them, but you're engaging. You're asking questions. They're asking questions to you. And there's a lot of things as children's authors that we can use to make the experience a lot more fun. And a couple of those techniques are alliteration is one I use a lot. One of my favorite techniques is foreshadowing, where I put clues in the story early to tell the reader what's going to happen next. And sometimes they don't even see those clues until they read the book multiple times. And then they notice, oh, wow, I know why he put that in there. It's because it says what's going to happen next. And I do that a lot with Benjamin Birdie, the 2 books in the series in that. There's other things you can use. I mean, there's font usage, the way fonts come alive on the page. Instead of just writing the text in its normal font, you make it come alive and it kind of signals what that word is about. So we do that a lot too. But yeah, there are definitely a lot of techniques that I use.
It sounds like you use a lot of the things that someone, if they're writing a novel or a young adult chapter book or something, those things are still relevant going into this book for.
Oh, absolutely. I have I've written one of the books that I wrote actually with my co-author as you've seen is it's literacy on the emerging technologies of cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin and Web3. And my co-author, who actually approached me because he had seen my books and he wanted to write a book about Bitcoin because his daughter thought he worked for Bitcoin. So he goes, okay, I have to write about book because I need to teach the younger generation what this is all about. And I loved it immediately, his concept, and I said I'd love to get involved. So we started writing this children's book together because I came with a perspective of a children's author. He came with the knowledge of the industry, the fintech, the cryptocurrency industry. And just a couple of months into the writing process, he looks at me and he goes, "I've written 3 books." He goes, "Children's book writing is the toughest ever." He goes, "I'll tell you right now." He goes, "It's so much more difficult than writing for adults," and which is a nice thing to hear, because it takes a lot. It takes a lot to, especially concepts like these emerging technologies, to try to not dumb them down, but to make them understandable, by the younger generation. And and I think we did a pretty good job with that one. We're actually writing the sequel to that book, so we're excited where it's going. Teaching, and we're teaching kids responsibly, because a lot of people don't understand. They think crypto is about trying to make money on all these different. No. It's about learning the future of money and what's coming our way. We really need to educate, especially the youth, on what's happening in the future with the financial structures around the world. Yeah.
Agreed. And this reminds me of a conversation I had with my wife. We were talking about Mr. Rogers, and one of her favorite things about Mr. Rogers was he could have those hard conversations. He didn't shy away from topics of death, parents being separated. It was all there on this child's program, but his delivery was amazing.
Yes, yeah, and Sesame Street too. I feel my kids grew up on Sesame Street, and no wonder it's been around for 50 plus years. It's just an incredible show.
Mm-hmm. So, how do you go about teaching responsibly? How do you go about picking which themes it is that you need to zero down on, and which topics need to be addressed for the sake of a child's development?
Yeah, one of the things when I started writing, especially Benjamin Birdie's First Flight, is as I started getting into the storyline and about how these animals, you meet different animals, and they're kind to each other, and they want to help each other. And one of the things that I've always said to my wife is, when I'm writing, I want to be mindful. I want kids to learn about kindness, number one, absolutely, but learn about teamwork, and learn about how good you feel when you're helping someone, and learn about compassion. And one thing that really, and this, it didn't come from me, but it came from someone who was reviewing my book early on. You send the book out for review to see what other peers think, and what other book review companies think. And I got this really glowing review from one book company or reviewer, who said they saw all these animals on Benjamin Street, and they said those animals represent society. They represent different people, because every single animal is different. We all come from different nationalities, different religions, different backgrounds, different races. But at the end of the day, if we're kind to each other, and if we're compassionate to each other, and we help each other out, we can accomplish anything. And that's what they did. They accomplished getting this little bird from the bottom of the floor to his nest. So that, when I read that, I was like, wow, that's true. That's right. It just represents humanity, and that's what I want. I want kids to understand that kindness is so important in our lives, and treat people with respect, compassion. We don't have to be the same. We don't have to like the same thing. But if everybody can just get along, it's going to be a beautiful world. And that's the I hope what you can get out of my 2 Benjamin Birdie books.
So, looking at the differences between a children's book versus your typical, I want to say just chapter book. I don't know what the classification is between the two, but how do you market something like a children's book versus a novel or a memoir? What is it that really worked for you?
Yeah, I think these days, again, because the line has been, you have either the self-publishing world, and then you have the traditional publishing. With traditional publishing, you get some help from the publisher to market your book. But the reality is, and for self-publishing especially, the author, has to be out there, has to put themselves out there, has to, market not only their books, but their brand, what they stand for. That's important. For me, the way I marketed my books, or the way I market myself, is I did a lot of school visits. So teachers actually now reach out to me on a regular basis, although my time is consumed with other projects that I have. But I do a lot of, I do some school visits now, but I've done over 100 in the past few years, where I go and I read. Not only do I read my books, but I tell kids about the journey of how it is from an idea to concept. I teach kids about the different techniques I use, and and teachers love that. They feel it's part of their curriculum. But that's how I do it, and that's how I market my books. And in the past, we used to sell our books at schools, and we did a lot of marketing that way. But a few years back, as I think I mentioned to you, we created a foundation. Our foundation now actually provides complimentary books to children when I do school visits, because there's a lot of kids or families that don't have books at home, and story time for me and my family growing up was tremendous. Was so incredible to experience that time together. And when kids don't have that at home, they don't get that experience. And so that's why we do whatever we can to support especially children in need communities. And you do your best to do that, to provide them with those books. And you know what? Once they start reading at home, then their love of reading continues throughout their life. And we always say good readers are the ones that are will succeed in life.
And from what I know about your brand, it seems like you're all about inspiration. You're all about helping that next person see what's possible.
Yeah. Not only kids, but I've been told by a lot of teachers that from the school visits that we do, they come to me at the end. They said, you just inspired me to start my writing journey, or you just inspired me to do something else in life. Because I always joke around with my buddies or people. I say at 45, a lot of people that have done whatever they've done in business, they take up golf and they learn to golf. I took up children's writing. So, that's something, it's a passion, and follow your passion. If golf is your passion, follow it, do it. Because if you can wake up every day and know that you're following your passion, it's incredible. So yeah, I try to inspire, peers, people my age. I'm close to 60 now, and I always tell people there's no retiring here. I can't wait to just see what's next, and I can't wait for more stories to come out, because I have a lot of them. There's a lot of stories that I'm writing, especially for children. So I'm excited.
Well, let's zoom into that. That's kind of where the conversation's gone. Let's talk about what's next, because you are, you've written other books. You're working on some pretty amazing projects. What would you like to share with us?
Yeah, so my third book that I wrote, Where Are Sheila's Socks, was a book that I wrote with a co-author from Australia, believe it or not. She reached out to me on this author forum, and enjoyed my Benjamin Birdie books, and she needed help with her rhyme. And when I saw her manuscript, the first manuscript, I loved it. And I said, I think I can help you. Maybe we can do this together, because this is how much I love it. And she absolutely agreed. And, next couple of months we worked together and we co-authored Where Are Sheila's Socks. And it's about actually her daughter. Her daughter's name is Sheila. When Sheila was 7 years old, missing her socks. So it's a really, really fun kind of mystery book about, where did these socks go? And that's where our foundation's name actually comes from. Our foundation is called Sheila Shares Foundation, and it's based on the character Sheila. So that's what we do. We want to share, reading and the love of reading with children around the world. But that was my third book. So I've actually written the sequel to Where Are Sheila's Socks, and it's called Where Are Sheila's Shoes, and can't wait to get that published soon. There's also, we were publishing a sequel to our Decoding Crypto book series.
Yes.
Where about the emerging technologies. We're very excited with this one. We're going to focus on Bitcoin on this one, and teaching children what Bitcoin is all about, and different cryptocurrencies, and what will happen in the next several years with this new financial technology that is Bitcoin. So that's that. But the most exciting thing I think right now that I'm working on is with my Benjamin Birdie book series. I'm actually developing a children's animated series based on those books, and we're working with a group right now that is in exploration, and we just are excited where this can go. So we're hoping we can make some progress in the coming year, and get this out maybe by 2026. So we're keeping our fingers crossed on that.
Very excited to hear about that. We have a few extra minutes. I wanted to actually ask you a bit about Decoding Crypto. There is no content out there that I know of when it comes to crypto for young understanding. Like even for my age, it's hard to find reliable information that isn't clickbaity or connected to a scam or trying to get me to reinvest my 401k into something else.
Absolutely, this is what it is. Financial literacy, especially in the new emerging technologies, was lacking. When my co-author approached me a few years back, when we right before we wrote the book, I looked to see what's out there on not only Bitcoin but on just cryptocurrencies, Web3, blockchain, what's out there, and the material was not good. It was not good. It wasn't suited for younger kids or middle grade kids. It was some of that was this is how you make money on Bitcoin, and no, that's not how we wanted to teach these new technologies. So when we got together with my co-author, we said we have to teach it very responsibly. Like I said, I incorporate a lot of techniques that I've used in my children's book writing, and with that, I took those fun, engaging techniques, and we created two characters that are the head characters for it's a professor and a digital coin, basically, and they're teaching kids about all the different topics of these emerging technologies, but in a fun, relatable way. But when I say responsible, is we made sure that we're not telling kids or even adults, and a lot of adults say, actually, this book is for them. They tell us, this book actually made me now understand cryptocurrencies and what it's all about, and so forth. And they said, and I love the way that you're teaching it, because you're not telling us to go buy them. You're basically saying, educate yourselves on these new technologies, because one day they might change the way money, we call it the future of money. That's teaching responsibly. And I don't like books that actually say or peddle a certain coin or peddle a certain cryptocurrency or any of those new technologies. It's we're doing it the proper way, and that's why we are supported by so many educators. I mean, we have educators reading our book to their students. We have school administrators, we have principals, and because they're saying that this is the way we want to teach our kids about these new technologies.
So one of the things that stands out for me when it comes to your work, and to be fair, all children's books, is the art. And it's like you said, it's part of what tells a story. So I'm wondering, give our listeners maybe some tips or tricks when it comes to planning for the art to be introduced to the book, or finding the right artist, or going through that process. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, that's actually one of the reasons I self-published versus going through traditional publishers, is because the author sometimes doesn't have a say in who the illustrator is, how the art or how their vision is portrayed on the page, and I did not want that. I wanted to have someone or work with an illustrator that could take my vision, my imagination, and put it on the page. So that was one of the reasons I self-published, and I looked online at that time when I was looking for illustrators. I looked at over 200 different illustrators, believe it or not. There's a lot of sites out there with the works, with different illustrator works, and I narrowed it down to about 5 of them that I just loved their illustration style, but I also loved the way they portrayed animals and facial expressions of animals. And from those 5, I contacted all of them. I asked them, I talked to them about the project. I went through this kind of vetting process with them. And eventually I settled on Morgan. Morgan Spicer is my illustrator. She's illustrated my 2 Benjamin Birdie books. She's illustrated Where Are Sheila Socks? And I know we'll be working together with many other books in the future. But she was just incredible, and that to me, the process of creating, telling her what I want on the page. But again, I also gave her free rein. And if you have suggestions and if you have some really cool thoughts, I want you to tell me or surprise me. And I remember when we were going through each spread, it took about anywhere from a day and a half to 3 days per spread for her to illustrate the spread. It was like every time she would email me the spread, it was like opening up a Christmas present. So I would be like, okay, I can't wait to see what's next, But it was such a fun process, and especially working with Morgan, she was incredible. She has such a brilliant imagination, and the way she can just take a page and just make it come to life was incredible. So yeah, especially with children's picture books, illustrations are just as important, or even more important sometimes, than the actual wording, believe it or not. Yeah.
Well, we have a few minutes left, but I wanted to ask you about your foundation. You've mentioned it a few times, but for someone to 12 years ago, you said, start working on a children's book, to all of a sudden have a foundation, that's pretty inspiring. That's kind of milestone to have accomplished.
Yeah, you know what it was is that we many years ago we would go to author fairs, we would go to schools, and of course teachers would always tell us, can we purchase the book, and we give forms out for the parents, and this was about 7 years ago, I think, maybe a little more. My wife and I went to this author fair, and it was at night, and families would come, and we all had our booths, all the authors, and we'd sell our books there. We'd talk about the books and our writing process. And I remember this little child. He was around 8 years old, and I remember he comes to our booth, and he takes out quarters, and he puts it on the table, and he goes, is this and he's looking at the quarters, and then he puts them back in his pocket, and he takes the book, he starts looking at it, he's hugging it, he's reading it, and I said, take it. So he walks with it. He comes back later, and his sister came, and his sister was about, I would say, 13, and she goes over to me and she goes, how much is the book? And I said, oh, it's whatever it was, $10, $12, I forget. So she takes out his quarters, and she takes out more quarters, and she starts putting them on the table and starts counting. I immediately at that point, and sometimes I can't even talk about this without tearing up, but I said, take that back. I signed both books for the kids. I gave it to them, and the little boy was so excited. I didn't accept any money from them, and I looked at my wife, and she's tearing also, and we said, we got to do something about this. So we created a foundation, and we just donate now. We just donate books to every community or school that we go to, especially with kids that need books at home. Yeah, so that's the reason, and I think it's when you give back is more important than anything. So that's our reason for doing that.
That's fantastic. Well, if anyone would like to get a copy of any of your books, primarily we're talking about Benjamin today, but where can they find your work?
So all the books are on Amazon. They could always search my name, Michael Dotsikas, and you can find them on Amazon. They're also on barnesandnoble.com. Some bookstores, of course, around the country. We actually were in Barnes and Noble for a while. And my website. So my website is michaeldotsikas.com. And if you order through my website, you can actually get a personalized copy. So I can actually sign it for you. So that's, and sign it, inscribe it to, the child that will eventually get the book. So, yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, Michael, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. This is a great conversation.
It was my pleasure, Isaac. I admire you and your work all the time, and it was my pleasure coming on here. Thank you again for having me.
Thank you. Links to Mike's work are down in the show notes below, as well as a link to his website in case you'd like to learn more or reach out to him. If you're new to the show, again, be sure that you subscribe so you never miss a new episode. And with that, we will see you next time.